Russ Tamblyn had to do most of his acting in this movie by his lonesome. That's the way it goes when you play a guy only 6 inches tall. Some of the times they shrunk Russ down to pint size via special effects, but most of the time the director of the movie, George Powell, achieved the effect he wanted by having Russ work around oversized furniture and props, and by placing the camera as far as 90 feet away from him. Sometimes they even cut holes in the ceiling of the soundstage to get the camera high enough to properly make Russ Tamblyn look the size of a thumb. Up next, Russ is back with Robert Wise, who co-directed him in West Side Story. But our next film is not a musical. It's a very scary movie, in fact, set in a spooky house where strange things go bump in the night, as witnessed by those silly enough to spend a night in a haunted house.
Turner Classic Movies is open all night. We conclude our tribute to Russ Tamblyn with his turn in The Haunting. Then a mysterious Meryl Streep puts psychiatrist Roy Scheider on the couch in Still of the Night. And an Egyptian pharaoh unleashes his vengeance on the USA in The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. Be very afraid with Turner Classic Movies tonight.
As long as I got a foot, I'll kick booze. As long as I got a fist, I'll punch it. And as long as I've got a tooth, I'll bite it. And when I'm old and gray and toothless and bootless, I'll gum it till I go to heaven and booze goes to hell.
Burt Lancaster was a movie star in the truest sense of the word. He had what the great director Billy Wilder called cinema magic. I should know, because I directed Burt Lancaster in 5 films. In a career that lasted nearly 50 years, Burt never really gave a bad performance. But I believe that one of his best was in Fred Zinnemann's From Here to Eternity. Zinnemann brought out Burt's magnetism and sexual appeal, touched on all of his strengths, and showed his vulnerable side.
Karen, I'm no officer. I'm an enlisted man. I can't be anything else. If I tried to be an officer, I'd be putting on an act. I just can't do it. Please don't ask me why.
The first movie I made with Burt Lancaster, The Young Savages, was a challenge. Since I had never worked with him, I had to prove myself. Now, we didn't always agree, but he didn't argue with me. He was, however, amazed by some of my camera angles. Everything worked out eventually, and we ended the picture cordially, but I didn't expect to work with him again. Much to my surprise, I soon was. I was asked to take over the direction of Birdman of Alcatraz. This was a story I really wanted to make.
First day I came here, you as much as asked me to give it down on my knees and whip her. I wouldn't do it then, and I won't do it now. I won't lick your hand, and that's what eats you, ain't it, Keeper? Well, you keep this in mind. A man ain't whipped until he quits, and I'll never give you that pleasure.
Burt, too, was passionate about the life of the Birdman, Robert Stroud. The two men had much in common. Both were rebels in their own way. Stroud fighting the prison system, and Lancaster the studio system. Burt Lancaster was one of the first stars to have a successful independent company producing and starring in his own movies. The next film Lancaster and I worked on together was 7 Days in May. Kirk Douglas was originally set to play the general, but because Kirk wanted Burt Lancaster in the movie, we offered the better role to Burt. I wasn't too sure I wanted to work with Lancaster again, but Douglas convinced me. They played off each other perfectly. Kirk